The morning sun cast long shadows across the Riverside Community Fair as families streamed through the entrance gates, children clutching balloons and cotton candy, while parents navigated strollers through the growing crowd. The annual event had become a beloved tradition, bringing together local businesses, community organizations, and city services in a celebration of neighborhood unity. Fire trucks displayed their gleaming red paint jobs, while paramedics demonstrated CPR techniques. On plastic mannequins, the air buzzed with excitement, laughter, and the distant sound of carnival music from the ride section. Maria Martinez adjusted her worn purse strap nervously as she guided her 7-year-old daughter Emma through the maze of booths and displays. They'd only been able to afford the small entrance fee because Maria's supervisor at the diner had slipped her an extra $20 tip the night before, whispering, "Take Emma somewhere fun." Money was always tight since Maria's husband had left 3 years ago, but she was determined to give Emma normal childhood experiences whenever possible. Emma's dark eyes sparkled with wonder as she took in the sights around them. She'd grown into a thoughtful, observant child, perhaps more serious than other kids her age, but Maria attributed this to the hardships they'd endured together. Emma rarely complained about their small apartment, their second-hand clothes, or the nights when dinner consisted of peanut butter sandwiches. She was resilient, adaptable, and surprisingly mature for someone who just turned 7 last month. The police department had set up an impressive display near the center of the fairgrounds. Multiple patrol cars sat with their doors open, inviting children to sit behind the wheels and pretend to be officers. A motorcycle unit demonstrated precise maneuvers while a crowd of teenagers cheered. Tables loaded with safety pamphlets, coloring, books, and stickers created a rainbow of community outreach materials. But it was the K-9 demonstration area that drew the largest crowd. Officer Sarah Chun stood proudly beside her partner of 4 years, a magnificent German shepherd named Rex. At 8 years old, Rex carried himself with the dignity of a veteran law enforcement officer, though recent months had been challenging. His right hind leg bore the invisible scars of his final mission, and his walking gait revealed a slight limp that ended his active duty career. Today was actually one of his last public appearances before retirement, though Chun hadn't mentioned this to the curious onlookers, asking questions about police dog training. Rex's thick coat gleamed in the morning sunlight, his black and tan coloring striking against the white chest marking that made him easily identifiable among his K-9 colleagues. His ears stood alert despite his recent struggles, and his intelligent brown eyes scanned the crowd with the practiced awareness of a professional who'd spent years protecting and serving his community. Chun had been fielding questions for over an hour, explaining how police dogs are trained, what commands they respond to, and how they become partners with their human officers. Children giggled as Rex demonstrated basic commands like sit and stay, though she kept the routine simple to avoid straining his injured leg. Emma and Maria approached the K-9 area just as Chun was explaining Rex's service record to a group of fascinated parents. Rex has been instrumental in over 200 arrests, helped locate dozens of missing persons, and detected narcotics in countless investigations, Chun said, her voice filled with pride and affection for her 4-legged partner. Emma had been walking normally, chattering quietly to her mother about wanting to pet one of the police horses they'd seen earlier when something extraordinary happened. She stopped walking so abruptly that Maria nearly tripped over her. Emma's entire body went rigid, her small frame trembling as her eyes locked onto Rex with laser-like intensity. Her face drained of color, and her breathing became rapid and shallow. Maria followed her daughter's gaze, seeing only a typical German shepherd police dog among the crowd of uniformers and civilians. "Emma? Mia, what's wrong?" Maria asked, crouching down to her daughter's eye level with growing concern. But Emma seemed unable to hear her mother's voice. Her right arm rose slowly, shakily, until her small finger pointed directly at Rex, across the demonstration area. Her lips moved silently at first, then barely audible words escaped. "My protector." The phrase sent chills down Maria's spine. Emma had never used those words before, had never spoken about needing protection or having a protector. Where had this come from? Rex's reaction was equally startling and impossible to ignore. The moment Emma's finger pointed in his direction, the professional police dog's demeanor completely transformed. His ears perked forward with sudden alertness. His head tilted as if trying to hear a distant sound, and a soft whine escaped his throat. Rex began pulling against his leash with unusual urgency, his powerful body straining toward Emma, despite Chon's attempts to keep him in position. "Rex, stay," Chon commanded firmly, but her partner's attention remained fixed on the small girl pointing at him from 30 feet away. Other fairgoers began to notice the unusual interaction. Parents pulled their children closer, unsure what was happening, while Chun felt her training kick into high alert mode. Police dogs didn't typically react this way to random children. Especially not Rex, who was known for his calm temperament and professional behavior in public settings. Emma took one tentative step forward, then another, as if drawn by an invisible force. Tears began streaming down her cheeks, though her expression wasn't one of fear or sadness. It was recognition, pure and unmistakable. "That's him," she whispered. Louder this time, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet demonstration area. "That's my protector." Rex's whining grew more insistent, his tail beginning to wag, despite his obvious confusion about why he was being restrained from approaching this particular child. His brown eyes never left Emma's face, and seasoned officers in the area began to take notice of the unprecedented behavior from one of their most reliable canine veterans. Maria felt her world tilting sideways as she watched her daughter's inexplicable reaction to a dog they'd supposedly never encountered before. Something was happening that she didn't understand, something that connected her child to this police dog in ways that defied logical explanation. The crowd grew silent, sensing they were witnessing something extraordinary unfold between a 7-year-old girl and a veteran police dog who somehow, impossibly, seemed to recognize each other. Officer Sarah Chun's 7 years of police training had prepared her for many situations, but nothing quite like this. As she watched the inexplicable connection between Rex and the trembling little girl, every instinct told her something profound was unfolding. She'd seen Rex interact with hundreds of children during community events, always professional, always gentle, but never like this. The veteran canine's entire body language screamed recognition, as if he were greeting a long-lost family member. Shen made a decision that would change multiple lives forever. "Hey there, sweetheart," she said softly, approaching Emma with the careful movements she'd learned from years of dealing with trauma victims. "I'm Officer Chun, and this is my partner Rex. He seems really interested in meeting you. Can you tell me your name?" Emma's tear-streaked face turned toward Chun, but her eyes immediately returned to Rex, who continued straining against his leash with unprecedented urgency. The crowd around them had grown larger, sensing drama, but Chun raised her hand to signal them back, creating a protective circle around the family. "Emma," the little girl whispered, her voice barely audible above the fair's background noise. "My name is Emma Martinez." Maria Martinez felt her chest tighten with anxiety. This was exactly the kind of attention she tried to avoid: crowds staring, officials asking questions. Her experiences with bureaucracy had rarely ended well, especially during their darkest period 2 years ago. But something in Officer Chun's gentle demeanor and genuine concern made her hesitate before pulling Emma away. "Emma's a beautiful name," Chun said, crouching down to the child's eye level while maintaining control of Rex's leash. Can you tell me why you called Rex your protector? Have you two met before? The question hung in the air, like a challenge to reality itself. Emma looked back and forth between Rex and Officer Chun, her small mind clearly struggling to process. Memories that seemed too big, too frightening for someone so young. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand and took a shuddering breath. It was so cold, Emma began, her voice gaining strength as the memory surfaced. And dark. Really, really dark. Mama was sleeping, and I heard scary noises, so I went to look for help. Maria's face went ashen. She knew exactly what night Emma was describing, though they'd never talked about the details. March 15th, 2022, the worst night of both their lives, when their precarious homeless situation had nearly cost them everything. I got lost, Emma continued, her words tumbling out faster now. There was water everywhere, and it was so loud. I crawled under the big tunnel thing because I was scared, but then the water started coming in, and it was so cold. Chun felt goosebumps rise on her arms. Rex's behavior was becoming more agitated by the second, as if Emma's words were triggering his own memories. I thought I was going to ... to go to sleep forever like Grandma did, Emma said, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. But then I heard barking, and this big dog came splashing through the water. He had white on his chest, just like... She pointed directly at Rex's distinctive white chest marking. Just like him. The crowd around them had gone completely silent. Even the carnival music seemed muted as Emma's story unfolded. He was so warm, Emma continued, her small hands unconsciously reaching toward Rex, who had finally stopped pulling and was now sitting perfectly still, his intelligent eyes never leaving her face. He laid down next to me and put his head on my tummy, and he kept barking and barking until the lights came. Maria couldn't breathe. She'd never told Emma the full story of that night, how she'd fallen asleep from exhaustion after 16 hours of looking for work, how she'd woken up to find Emma's sleeping bag empty, how she'd screamed and searched for hours before the police found Emma safe but unconscious in a storm drain 3 miles away. Officer Chun's radio crackled to life, but she ignored it. This was bigger than crowd control or fair logistics. She was witnessing something that defied standard operating procedures. The men in uniforms came, Emma said, her story gaining momentum now. And there was a big man with a dog, and he was hurt too. His arm was bleeding. But the dog wouldn't leave me until they put me in the white truck with the flashing lights. Chun's heart began racing. She'd heard this story before, not from Emma, but from the department. 2 years ago, Rex and his handler officer James Rodriguez had been conducting routine patrols when Rex had suddenly abandoned protocol, leading them on what initially seemed like a wild chase toward the industrial district. The storm drain system, near the old textile factory, was scheduled for safety inspection the following week. But Rex had somehow detected something wrong 3 days early. They'd found a hypothermic child, barely conscious, clutching a small stuffed elephant. The rescue had been harrowing. Rodriguez had dislocated his shoulder and torn his rotator cuff when concrete debris shifted as they extracted the child. Rex had injured his leg in the same incident, the beginning of the end of both their active duty careers. But the paperwork had been a bureaucratic nightmare. The child had been rushed to the emergency room in critical condition, and in the chaos of medical treatment and shift changes, proper contact information was never collected. The case file listed her as Jane Doe, approximately 5 years old, reunited with guardian. No follow-up, no verification, no connection between the heroes and the child they'd saved. "You saved my life," Emma said directly to Rex, her voice stronger, now filled with absolute certainty. "You found me when nobody else could." Rex's response was immediate and overwhelming. The professional police dog lay down completely, rolled slightly onto his side in a gesture of complete submission and trust, and began wagging his tail so hard his entire body shook. This wasn't standard canine behavior. This was pure, unrestrained joy. Officer Chun reached for her radio with trembling hands. She needed to call Rodriguez immediately. She needed to pull files, check records, verify what seemed impossible but was clearly true. Most importantly, she needed to document this moment, because she was witnessing a miracle in the middle of a community fair, and the world needed to know that sometimes heroes and those they save find each other again against all odds. Emma stepped forward and gently placed her small hand on Rex's head. "I never forgot you," she whispered. "I never forgot my protector." The crowd erupted in applause, though most had no idea they'd just witnessed the reunion of two souls who'd saved each other's lives on the darkest night either had ever known. Officer Chun's hands trembled as she keyed her radio, her voice barely steady as she requested immediate backup, not for an emergency, but for what could only be described as a miracle. "Dispatch, this is Chun at the community fair. I need Sergeant Williams to respond to my location immediately. We have a situation that requires immediate attention from command staff." The radio crackled back. "Nature of emergency, Chun?" Chun looked down at Emma, who was now sitting cross-legged beside Rex, her small fingers gently stroking his graying muzzle, while the veteran canine rested his massive head in her lap. The sight would have been touching under normal circumstances, but knowing what she now knew made it absolutely extraordinary. "It's not an emergency, dispatch. It's—" Chun paused, knowing how impossible this would sound. "We've located the child from the March 15th, 2022 storm drain rescue. She's here with Rex, and they've recognized each other." The silence on the radio lasted so long that Chun thought her transmission hadn't gone through. Finally, "Repeat that, Chun. Did you say the March 15th rescue?" "Affirmative. The Jane Doe case. She's here. She's identified Rex." And double quotes Chun's voice broke slightly. "They remember each other." Within minutes, the fair security team had cordoned off the K9 demonstration area, creating a private space away from the growing crowd of onlookers. Word was spreading through the fairgrounds like wildfire. Something incredible was happening at the police display. Something involving the little girl and the police dog that had people wiping away tears and pulling out their phones to capture video. Sergeant Williams arrived with a thick manila folder tucked under his arm, Rex's complete service record, including the detailed incident report from that March night 2 years ago. His weathered face showed skepticism mixed with curiosity as he approached Chun, but one look at Rex's behavior around Emma silenced any doubts he might have harbored. "Jesus Christ," Williams muttered under his breath, watching Rex's unprecedented display of affection toward the child. In 23 years of law enforcement, he'd never seen a canine officer behave this way with a civilian. The incident report, made for sobering reading. Rex and Officer James Rodriguez had been conducting their usual midnight patrol of the industrial district when Rex had suddenly veered off course, ignoring all commands and leading Rodriguez toward the storm drain system near the abandoned textile factory. Rodriguez's report noted Rex's unusual and persistent behavior and his complete disregard for standard protocol. What they'd found had changed multiple lives forever. Emma Martinez, though she wasn't identified by name until now, had been discovered in a maintenance tunnel approximately 4 feet below ground level, trapped by rising water from a broken storm main. The temperature that night had dropped to 28 degrees Fahrenheit, and emergency medical technicians estimated she had less than 30 minutes of survival time remaining when they reached her. But the rescue had come at a devastating cost. The storm drain's concrete infrastructure, weakened by years of erosion and recent heavy rains, had begun collapsing as Rodriguez descended to reach Emma. A section of overhead piping had given way, striking Rodriguez in the shoulder and pinning him briefly against the tunnel wall. Rex, determined to reach the child, had squeezed through the narrowing gap, severely injuring his right hind leg when additional debris shifted and trapped him momentarily. Rodriguez's injuries had ended his 15-year career torn rotator cuff, dislocated shoulder, and chronic nerve damage that left him unable to handle the physical demands of police work. Rex's leg injury had been initially treated successfully, but complications arose months later when scar tissue began affecting his mobility and causing chronic pain. Both of them were heroes that night, Williams explained to the small group, now gathered around Emma and Rex. Rodriguez spent 4 months in physical therapy before medical retirement. Rex underwent 2 surgeries and was cleared for light duty, but his performance evaluations showed declining mobility. Emma looked up from where she was gently examining Rex's hind leg, her young fingers tracing the surgical scars hidden beneath his thick coat. "You got hurt saving me," she said, her voice filled with a mature understanding that seemed impossible for someone her age. "I'm sorry you got hurt saving me." Rex's response was immediate and heartbreaking. He shifted his weight to nuzzle Emma's face, his tail wagging despite the obvious discomfort the position caused his injured leg. It was as if he was telling her the pain didn't matter, that saving her had been worth every moment of suffering that followed. Maria Martinez had been standing silently throughout the revelations, processing information that recontextualized the worst period of her life. She'd never known the full story of Emma's rescue, never realized that 2 careers had been ended in the process of saving her daughter's life. The weight of that knowledge was overwhelming. "Where is Officer Rodriguez now?" Maria asked quietly, her voice thick with emotion. William's expression grew somber. Medical retirement wasn't kind to him. He's been struggling with depression, chronic pain, and... He paused, glancing at Emma. Financial difficulties. The department's medical coverage is limited, and both he and Rex have ongoing medical needs that aren't fully covered. Chun felt her heart sink as she realized where this conversation was heading. "Sarge, please tell me we're not." "Rex is scheduled for euthanization next Tuesday," Williams said bluntly, his own voice betraying the emotion he was trying to suppress. "His medical bills have exceeded the department's budget for retired K-9 care. The veterinary costs, pain medication, physical therapy. We simply can't afford to maintain his treatment indefinitely." Emma's reaction was immediate and devastating. She threw her arms around Rex's neck, her small body shaking with sobs. "No," she cried, her voice carrying across the fairgrounds. "You can't. He's my protector. He saved my life." Rex seemed to understand the gravity of the conversation, his own demeanor shifting from joy to something resembling resignation. He'd been a working dog his entire life, trained to understand human commands and emotions, and the sadness in the Emma voices around him was unmistakable. Local news reporter Jessica Martinez, no relation to Emma, though the coincidence wasn't lost on anyone, had been covering the fair's community events when she heard about the commotion at the police display. What she found was a story that would change her career and touch hearts across the nation. "This is Jessica Martinez reporting from the Riverside Community Fair, where we're witnessing something truly extraordinary," she began, speaking into her camera while Emma continued holding Rex. 2 years ago, this police dog saved this little girl's life, ending his own career in the process. Today, they found each other again by pure chance, only to discover that their reunion may also be their goodbye. The live stream began immediately, and within minutes, comments and shares were multiplying exponentially. #SaveRex began trending on social media before anyone had even planned a campaign. Emma looked directly into the news camera, her tear-streaked face showing a determination that belied her 7 years. "Rex is a hero," she said, her voice steady despite her tears. "Heroes shouldn't die just because they got hurt being heroes. That's not fair." In that moment, watching a child advocate for the dog who'd saved her life, everyone present knew they were witnessing the beginning of something much larger than a simple reunion. They were seeing the birth of a movement that would challenge how society treats its four-legged heroes. The phone rang 3 times before Officer James Rodriguez picked up, his voice groggy with the heavy fog of afternoon pain medication. At 52, he'd never imagined his days would revolve around pill schedules and physical therapy appointments. But chronic pain had become his unwelcome companion since that night 2 years ago. "Rodriguez," he answered, not bothering to check the caller ID. "Jimmy, it's Sergeant Williams. I need you to sit down for this one." Rodriguez was already sitting standing. For more than 20 minutes at a time had become increasingly difficult since his medical retirement. The combination of nerve damage in his shoulder and the depression that had settled over him, like a heavy blanket, made most days feel like endurance tests rather than actual living. "What's going on, Sarge? Please tell me it's not more paperwork." "About my medical benefits. I can't handle another fight with the insurance company today." "Jimmy, do you remember the storm drain rescue? March 15th, 2022? The question hit Rodriguez like a physical blow. Of course he remembered. Every detail was burned into his memory with painful clarity. That night had simultaneously been his greatest success and his ultimate failure as a police officer. They'd saved a child's life, but the cost had been so high that sometimes he wondered if the universe was punishing him for some unknown sin. "What about it?" Rodriguez asked carefully, his free hand unconsciously moving to massage his damaged shoulder. "The little girl, we found her. She's here at the community fair, and Jimmy, ... Williams paused, clearly struggling with how to explain. "The impossible." She recognized Rex. They remember each other. Rodriguez dropped the phone. The device clattered to the floor of his modest apartment, bouncing once before sliding under his recliner. For 30 seconds, he sat in stunned silence, processing words that didn't seem to belong in the same sentence. The little girl from the storm drain, the Jane Doe who'd haunted his dreams for 2 years, was alive. Well, and somehow had found Rex again. He scrambled to retrieve the phone, his movements awkward due to his physical limitations. Sarge, are you still there?" "I'm here, Jimmy. And there's more. Her name is Emma Martinez. She's 7 years old now, and she remembers everything. She remembers you being hurt during the rescue. She's been asking about you." Rodriguez felt tears welling up in his eyes, the first genuine emotion he'd experienced. In months that wasn't pain or despair. Since his medical retirement, he'd struggled with a sense of worthlessness, wondering if his 15 years of service had made any real difference in the world. Insurance companies treated him like a burden. Disability evaluators questioned his pain levels, and former colleagues had gradually stopped calling as his depression deepened. But this little girl remembered him, the child whose life he'd saved. The cost of his own career was asking about him. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Rodriguez said, already reaching for his keys despite the fact that driving aggravated his shoulder pain. "Jimmy, wait. There's something else you need to know before you get here." The tone in Williams' voice stopped Rodriguez cold. "What?" "Rex is scheduled for euthanization next Tuesday. The department can't afford his medical care anymore, and his leg injury has gotten worse. We've been hiding it from the public, but, Jimmy, Emma doesn't know yet that this might be goodbye forever." Rodriguez felt his world tilt sideways for the second time in 5 minutes. Rex, his partner, his friend, the dog who'd been more loyal than most humans he'd known, was going to be put down because of injuries sustained, saving the same child who now wanted to see them both. "Like hell he is," Rodriguez said, his voice carrying the first hint of his old authority in months. "I'll figure something out. Give me 30 minutes." The drive to the fairgrounds was a blur of memories and determination. Rodriguez's mind raced through the events of that night, details he'd tried to forget during the dark months of recovery and depression. Rex's unusual behavior during their patrol, the way his partner had completely ignored commands and protocol. A desperate descent into the flooding storm drain where they'd found Emma barely clinging to life. He remembered her small face, pale and blue-tinged from hypothermia, clutching a bedraggled stuffed elephant like a lifeline. He remembered the weight of falling concrete and the searing pain in his shoulder, but mostly he remembered Rex's determination to reach the child, even as debris trapped and injured them both. The case files told only part of the story. What they couldn't capture was the human cost, not just Rodriguez's career-ending injuries or Rex's ongoing pain, but the bureaucratic nightmare that followed. Emergency room chaos had led to incomplete paperwork. Emma's traumatic state had prevented proper interviews, and shift changes meant critical information fell through administrative cracks. Jane Doe, approximately 5 years old, reunited with Guardian, 6 words that had separated heroes from the child they'd saved, creating a void that had haunted Rodriguez's dreams for 24 months. Arriving at the fairgrounds, Rodriguez spotted the crowd immediately. Even from the parking lot, he could see the unusual gathering around the police display, the news cameras, and the cordoned-off area that suggested something significant was happening. His first glimpse of Rex nearly brought him to his knees. His former partner looked older, grayer around the muzzle, and the slight limp in his gait was more pronounced than Rodriguez remembered. But Rex's eyes, those intelligent brown eyes that had been his window into criminal investigations for 4 years, still sparkled with the same awareness and dignity that had made him such an exceptional working dog. And then Rodriguez saw Emma. She was sitting beside Rex, her small hand resting gently on his head, speaking to him in soft tones that carried the unmistakable cadence of love and recognition. Even from a distance, Rodriguez could see this wasn't a child meeting a dog for the first time. This was a reunion between souls who had shared something profound. "Officer Rodriguez?" The voice belonged to a woman he didn't recognize, mid-30s, with dark hair and worried eyes. "I'm Maria Martinez, Emma's mother. I never got to thank you properly for what you did." Rodriguez found himself speechless, overwhelmed by the complexity of emotions flooding through him. This woman, his mother, had been living with the knowledge that strangers had risked everything to save her daughter's life, but bureaucratic failures had prevented her from expressing her gratitude. "Ma'am, I was just doing my job," Rodriguez managed, though his voice cracked slightly. "No," Maria said firmly. "What you did went far beyond your job. You saved my daughter's life, and it cost you your career. That's not something I take lightly." Emma looked up from her position beside Rex, and her face broke into a smile that could have powered the entire fairgrounds. "You came," she exclaimed, jumping to her feet and running toward him with the fearless enthusiasm that only children possess. Rodriguez knelt down, ignoring the protest from his damaged shoulder, as Emma threw her arms around his neck. "I never forgot you," she whispered. "I never forgot how you and Rex saved me." In that moment, surrounded by crowds and cameras and the chaos of a community fair, Rodriguez felt something he hadn't experienced since that night in the storm drain, a sense of purpose, of meaning, of being exactly where he was supposed to be. But the joy was tempered by the knowledge that Tuesday was coming, and with it, a decision that would separate this remarkable trio forever, unless they could find a way to change the seemingly unchangeable reality of bureaucratic budgets and administrative limitations. Looking down at Emma's hopeful face and Rex's trusting eyes, Rodriguez knew he was about to fight the most important battle of his life, not against criminals or dangerous situations, but against a system that had forgotten the value of the heroes who served it. The reunion that had begun with tears of joy was about to take a devastating turn that would test the very limits of what a 7-year-old heart could endure. Officer Chun had been dreading this moment since Sergeant Williams first mentioned Rex's scheduled euthanization. Standing in the cordoned-off area of the community fair, surrounded by news cameras and growing crowds of onlookers, she knew she had to tell Emma the truth. But how do you explain to a child that bureaucracy and budget constraints could end the life of her 4-legged hero? Emma sat cross-legged on the grass beside Rex, her small fingers gently combing through his thick coat, while she chattered about everything that had happened in the 2 years since their first meeting. She told him about starting school, about learning to read, about the nightmares that had gradually faded but never completely disappeared. Rex listened with the patient attention of a therapist, his brown eyes never leaving her face, occasionally offering a gentle nudge with his muzzle when her voice grew sad. "Emma, sweetheart," Chun began, her voice carefully controlled, "I need to tell you something important about Rex." Rodriguez, still overwhelmed by the emotional reunion with the child he'd helped save, sensed the shift in atmosphere immediately. His years of police experience had taught him to read body language, and Chun's posture screamed bad news. Very bad news. "What is it?" Emma asked, looking up from where she was showing Rex her small backpack with its collection of school supplies and snacks. "Is Rex sick?" The innocent question hit like a physical blow. Technically, Rex wasn't sick. He was injured, in chronic pain, and expensive to maintain. But in the cold calculus of municipal budgets, there was no meaningful difference between illness and financial inconvenience. "Emma, the police department takes very good care of all our working dogs," Chun explained carefully, choosing each word with deliberate precision. "But when dogs retire because of injuries, sometimes... What?" Emma's voice carried the sharp edge of a child who'd learned early in life that adults often delivered bad news wrapped in careful language. Sergeant Williams stepped forward, his weathered face showing the strain of delivering news that violated every principle he'd held during 23 years of public service. "Emma, honey, Rex has been retired from active duty because his leg was hurt so badly during your rescue. The department has been paying for his medical care, but ... But what?" Emma's voice was rising now, and Rex responded to her distress by moving closer, pressing his warm body against her side in a gesture of comfort that had probably saved her life 2 years ago. "But the cost of his ongoing treatment is more than the department can afford." Williams finished, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "Rex is scheduled to go to sleep forever on Tuesday." The silence that followed was deafening. Emma's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, understanding, disbelief, and finally, raw horror. "You mean you're going to kill him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Emma," Maria started, reaching for her daughter. "No." Emma's scream cut across the fairgrounds like a siren, causing heads to turn from hundreds of yards away. "You can't kill him. He saved my life. He's a hero. Heroes don't get killed for being heroes." Rex whined softly, sensing Emma's distress, but not understanding its source. His tail, which had been wagging almost constantly since their reunion, stopped moving entirely. "How much money?" Rodriguez asked suddenly, his voice carrying the flat tone of someone calculating the impossible. How much would it cost to save his life? Williams consulted the folder in his hands, though he already knew the numbers by heart. The immediate surgery to repair the deterioration in his leg would be $8,000. Ongoing pain management, physical therapy, special diet, regular veterinary checkups, ... We're looking at approximately $3,000 annually for the rest of his life. Rodriguez felt his heart sink. His medical retirement benefits barely covered his own expenses, let alone thousands of dollars for veterinary care. The number might as well have been $1 million. Maria Martinez was doing her own desperate calculations. She worked 2 part-time jobs, morning shifts at a diner and evening cleaning office buildings. After rent, utilities, food, and Emma's school expenses, she typically had less than $50 left each month. $8,000 might as well have been $8 million. "I have some savings," Rodriguez said, though everyone could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "Maybe $1,500, maybe $2,000 if I cash out my pension early. But I can work extra shifts," Maria added desperately. "I can pick up weekend work. Maybe ... Emma looked back and forth between the adults, watching them struggle with numbers that made no sense to her 7-year-old understanding of the world. All she knew was that the dog who had saved her life, the gentle giant who had kept her warm and safe during the most terrifying night of her existence, was going to die because people didn't have enough pieces of green paper. "This is stupid," Emma shouted, her voice carrying across the fair with the crystal clarity that only children possess when confronting adult absurdity. "He saved my life. Doesn't that matter? Doesn't that count for anything?" The crowd that had gathered around. The drama was growing by the minute. Families with children, elderly couples, teenagers with smartphones already recording the unfolding tragedy, all watching as a little girl fought to save the life of her 4-legged guardian angel. News reporter Jessica Martinez had been live streaming the reunion, but now she found herself documenting something far more complex and heartbreaking. Her camera captured Emma's tear-streaked face as the child wrapped her arms around Rex's neck and whispered, "I won't let them hurt you. I promise. I don't know how, but I promise." Rex, despite his lack of understanding about veterinary bills and municipal budgets, seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation. He lay down fully, resting his large head in Emma's lap, and released a soft sigh that sounded remarkably like resignation. "There has to be something we can do," Sean said, her professional composure finally cracking. "Rex has given 8 years of his life to this community. He's helped solve crimes, found missing persons, kept people safe, and nearly died saving a child. That has to be worth something." Williams nodded grimly. "It should be worth everything." But the city council approved the budget cuts last month, and police canine medical care was one of the first things eliminated. My hands are tied. The bureaucratic reality was stark and unforgiving. In a world where municipal budgets were stretched thin and every expense required justification, the life of one retired police dog, no matter how heroic, simply didn't qualify as an essential expenditure. Emma looked up at the gathered adults, her young face showing a determination that seemed far beyond her years. "Then we have to find another way," she said simply. "We have to make people understand that Rex is worth saving." Rodriguez knelt down beside Emma and Rex, his damaged shoulder protesting the movement, but his heart swelling with admiration for this remarkable child's refusal to accept defeat. "You're right, Emma. We do have to find another way." In that moment, as news cameras rolled and social media feeds began buzzing with shares and comments, none of them realized they were about to discover just how powerful the voice of one determined little girl could be when amplified by a community that still believed in heroes. Officer James Rodriguez had never been particularly tech-savvy, but desperation has a way of teaching new skills quickly. Sitting in his modest apartment at 11:47 p.m. on Saturday night, his shoulder throbbing from the day's emotional stress, he stared at his laptop screen with the intensity of a man whose last chance at redemption hung in the balance. He'd created the Facebook post 3 times, deleting each version for being either too clinical or too emotional. How do you capture the essence of heroism, sacrifice, and injustice in a social media update that people would actually read and share? How do you make strangers care about a retired police dog they've never met and a little girl whose story sounds too incredible to be true? The final version was brutally simple. This is Rex, K9 Officer Badge number 47. 2 years ago, he saved a 5-year-old girl from drowning in a storm drain. The rescue ended both our careers. I'm medically retired with permanent shoulder damage, and Rex injured his leg so severely that he can no longer work. On Tuesday, the Riverside Police Department plans to euthanize Rex because they can't afford his medical bills, $8,000 for surgery, $3,000 annually for care. The little girl he saved found him today at a community fair. Her name is Emma Martinez, and she's begging us to save her protector's life. I don't know what else to do. If you believe heroes deserve better than this, please share this post. Rodriguez attached 3 photos. Rex in his prime working days, the official rescue report from March 15, 2022, and a picture from today showing Emma with her arms wrapped around Rex's neck, both of them looking directly into the camera with expressions that needed no explanation. He hit share at 11:52 p.m. and closed the laptop, not expecting much. Maybe a few dozen likes from former colleagues, perhaps 100 shares if he was lucky. Small-town stories rarely gain traction on social media, unless they involved either spectacular tragedy or heartwarming triumph, and this story seemed destined to end in tragedy unless something miraculous happened in the next 3 days. Rodriguez fell asleep in his recliner. Pain medication dulling both his chronic shoulder ache and his expectations for the morning. His phone woke him at 6:23 a.m. with a notification sound he'd never heard before. The rapid-fire pinging of his Facebook app receiving more activity than it had accumulated in the previous 6 months combined. Still groggy from medication and sleep, Rodriguez fumbled for his glasses and opened the app. The numbers didn't make sense at first. 847 shares, 2,341 likes, 156 comments. He refreshed the page, certain there was some kind of error. 1,205 shares, 3,892 likes, 287 comments. By the time Rodriguez had fully awakened and made coffee, the post had been shared over 2,000 times and was gaining momentum at an exponential rate that defied everything he understood about social media dynamics. The comments were overwhelming in their emotional intensity. This breaks my heart. How much do we need to raise? Sarah from Michigan shared to all my groups. This dog deserves better. Mike from California. My father was a police officer. This is absolutely unacceptable. Jennifer from Texas. Where do I send money? This cannot happen. Robert from New York. But it was the comment from Emily Watson, a social media manager from Portland, that changed everything. I'm creating a GoFundMe page for Rex right now. This story needs to reach millions, not just hundreds. Rodriguez's phone rang before he could process what that meant. The caller ID showed Jessica Martinez from Channel 7 News. Officer Rodriguez? This is Jessica Martinez from yesterday's coverage. Have you seen what's happening online? I'm just starting to understand it, Rodriguez admitted, watching his share count climb past 3,000 in real time. Is this normal? Sir, your Facebook post has been shared over 4,000 times in the last 6 hours. It's trending on Twitter under #SaveRex. 3 national news outlets have already called the station, asking for interviews. This is not normal. This is extraordinary. Rodriguez felt his chest tighten with something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. What does that mean for Rex? It means you might want to call Emma and her mother. This story is about to go national, and I think they deserve to know that millions of people are about to meet their hero. By 8 a.m., Emma Martinez was sitting at her kitchen table eating cereal when her mother's phone started ringing. Maria had silenced it twice before curiosity. overcame her usual caution about unknown numbers. "Mrs. Martinez? This is Emily Watson from Portland, Oregon. I've created a GoFundMe page for Rex's medical expenses, and we've already raised $1,200 in the first hour. I wanted to get your permission before proceeding further." Maria nearly dropped the phone. "I'm sorry, what? Who is this?" "Ma'am, officer." Rodriguez's Facebook post about Rex has gone viral. Thousands of people are sharing it, and donations are pouring in. "We're going to save Rex's life." Emma, who had been half listening while concentrating on fishing marshmallows out of her cereal, suddenly gave her mother her full attention. "Mom, what about Rex?" "Mia," Maria said, her voice breaking with emotion, "I think people want to help. Save Rex." The GoFundMe page that Emily Watson had created was professionally designed with a clear, compelling headline: "Save Rex, a hero dog who sacrificed everything." She'd incorporated photos from Rodriguez's Facebook post along with a detailed timeline of events and specific funding goals. $8,000. Emergency leg surgery. $3,000. Annual medical care. $5,000. Additional emergency fund. The description was masterfully crafted to capture both the heroism of the original rescue and the injustice of Rex's current situation. Watson had years of experience in digital marketing, and she understood exactly how to present a story that would compel people to act rather than simply feel sad and scroll past by noon. The GoFundMe had raised $6,400 from 312 individual donors by 2 p.m. $12,847 from 567 donors by 5 p.m. $18,923 from 891 donors. The comments on the fundraising page told their own story of why Rex's situation had struck such a powerful chord with people across the country. "My son is a police officer. Thank you for honoring those who serve." $100. Donation. "Lost my German Shepherd last year. All dogs are heroes." $50 donation. "Emma's courage reminds me of my granddaughter." This is for both of them. $200 donation. Retired military. "We never leave our brothers behind 4 legs or 2. $500 donation. Officer Chun called Rodriguez that evening with news that would have seemed impossible 24 hours earlier. "Jimmy, I just got off the phone with Chief Morrison. The department is officially canceling Rex's euthanization. Whatever happens with the fundraising, we're not putting him down on Tuesday." Rodriguez felt tears streaming down his face as he processed the magnitude of what had happened. In less than 18 hours, a simple Facebook post had mobilized thousands of strangers to save the life of a dog they'd never met. Inspired by the story of a little girl whose determination had refused to accept an unjust outcome. But perhaps most remarkably, Emma Martinez, who didn't yet fully understand concepts like viral marketing or crowdfunding, had somehow managed to teach an entire nation about the true meaning of loyalty, gratitude, and the responsibility we all share to protect those who've protected us. The miracle was just beginning, but already it was clear that Tuesday would bring celebration rather than sorrow, and that sometimes the voice of one determined child can indeed change the world. Dr. Patricia Wong had been following the Rex story since Sunday morning when her veterinary technician, Amanda, burst into the clinic's break room with her phone in hand and tears streaming down her face. As the owner of Riverside's most prestigious animal hospital and a woman who dedicated 32 years to healing injured animals, Dr. Wong understood immediately that she was being presented with more than just another medical case. She was being offered the chance to be part of something extraordinary. "Amanda, get me Rex's medical files from the police department," Dr. Wong said without hesitation, "and clear my surgery schedule for tomorrow morning. We're doing this pro bono, and we're doing it right." By Monday afternoon, Dr. Wong's clinic had transformed into something resembling a campaign headquarters. The GoFundMe page had surpassed $45,000, but the financial support was only one facet of what had become a nationwide movement. Offers of help were pouring in from unexpected sources across the country, each one adding another layer to what Emma Martinez's simple plea had set in motion. Peaceful Paws Rehabilitation Center, located 40 miles outside Riverside, had called to offer 6 months of free physical therapy for Rex. The facility specialized in working with retired military and police animals, and their director, Dr. Marcus Thompson, had been moved to tears by the video of Emma reuniting with her protector. "We've worked with hundreds of retired service animals," Dr. Thompson told the local news crew, documenting the story's evolution. "But I've never seen a bond quite like this. What Emma and Rex share transcends the typical human-animal relationship. Saved each other in ways that go far beyond that night in the storm drain." The story had captured the attention of unexpected celebrities. Miranda Lopez, a country music star with 12 million social media followers, had shared the GoFundMe link with a simple message: "Heroes protect heroes. Period." Her single post had generated over $15,000 in donations within 2 hours. But perhaps most remarkably, the story had awakened something profound in ordinary people across the nation who saw in Rex's situation a reflection of how society too often discards those who've sacrificed for others. Margaret Chun, a 78-year-old retired teacher from Sacramento, had sent a handwritten letter along with her $500 donation. "My late husband was a Korean war veteran who struggled with PTSD for 60 years. He understood what it meant to serve and be forgotten. Rex reminds me that heroism comes in many forms, and gratitude should be more than just words." Elementary schools across 3 states had organized penny drives, with children bringing coffee cans full of coins to contribute to Rex's care. Emma's story had resonated powerfully with young people who understood, in the direct way that only children can, that fairness mattered more than budgets, and that heroes deserved protection. Roosevelt Elementary in Phoenix had raised $847.32. In 3 days, Lincoln Elementary in Denver contributed $623.19. Sunshine Elementary in Tampa sent $1,205.67, along with a hand-drawn card signed by 127 second graders. The Riverside Police Department found itself dealing with an unprecedented situation. Chief Morrison, who'd initially supported the euthanization decision as a necessary budget measure, was now fielding calls from reporters, politicians, and concerned citizens from across the country. The department's Facebook page, which typically received a few dozen likes per post, was now being followed by over 50,000 people demanding updates on Rex's condition. "This has become bigger than any of us anticipated," Chief Morrison admitted during a hastily arranged press conference. "We're grateful for the community support, but we need people to understand that this situation highlights broader challenges facing police departments nationwide regarding the care of retired service animals." Officer Chun had been designated as the primary liaison between the department and the growing media circus surrounding Rex's story. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing since Sunday, and she'd conducted more interviews in 3 days than in her previous 7 years of police work combined. "What people need to understand," Chun explained to a reporter from USA Today, "is that Rex isn't just any dog. He's a decorated officer who served this community for 8 years before that rescue mission ended his career. The fact that it's taken a viral social media campaign to secure his medical care reveals serious problems with how we treat our 4-legged veterans." Emma Martinez had become the unwitting face of a movement that was growing far beyond her 7-year-old understanding. Her mother Maria had been carefully managing Emma's exposure to the media attention, but it was becoming clear that their lives had been permanently changed by the events of the past 4 days. Emma doesn't fully grasp that millions of people now know her story, Maria explained to Jessica Martinez during a follow-up interview. She just knows that people want to help Rex, and that makes her happy. But I'm worried about what happens when all this attention fades and we're still dealing with the long-term reality of caring for a special needs dog. The practical implications were indeed complex. While the GoFundMe had exceeded all expectations, Rex would require ongoing medical care, specialized diet, and regular veterinary monitoring for the rest of his life. The initial surgery would address his immediate needs, but managing a retired, working dog with chronic injuries was a long-term commitment that went far beyond any one-time financial donation. Rodriguez had been working quietly behind the scenes to establish what he was calling Rex's Heroes Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting retired police and military working dogs. The idea had emerged from his realization that Rex's situation wasn't unique. Across the country, countless service animals were facing similar challenges when their working careers ended due to injury or age. Emma saved Rex's life, Rodriguez explained to the foundation's initial board of directors, which included Dr. Wong, Officer Chun, and 3 other retired law enforcement officers. But Rex's story can save the lives of hundreds of other service animals if we use this momentum correctly. The foundation had already received inquiries from police departments in 7 states regarding retired K-9 officers who needed medical care their departments couldn't afford. A military working dog rescue organization in Virginia had reached out about partnering to expand the foundation's reach to include retired military animals. As Monday evening approached and Rex's surgery was scheduled for early Tuesday morning, the GoFundMe total had reached $52,847 from over 2,100 individual donors. The excess funds would seed the foundation's work, creating a sustainable model for supporting retired service animals long after the media attention around Rex's story had faded. But perhaps the most profound impact of the past 4 days wasn't financial. It was the reminder that individual acts of courage and compassion could still inspire collective action in a world that often felt divided and disconnected. Emma Martinez, who would turn 8 in 3 months, had somehow managed to teach an entire nation about loyalty, gratitude, and the responsibility we all share to protect those who've protected us. Her simple refusal to accept Rex's fate had created ripples that would continue expanding long after Tuesday's surgery was complete. Tuesday morning would bring Rex's surgery, but it would also mark the beginning of something much larger, a movement to ensure that no service animal would ever again face euthanization simply because their heroism had come at too high a financial cost. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed through the windows of the Martinez family's new 3-bedroom house on Maple Street, modest home that had been purchased with funds from the Rex Foundation's Housing Assistance Program, one of many initiatives that had grown from Emma's simple plea to save her protector's life. Rex bounded across the spacious backyard with the joyful energy of a dog half his age, his surgically repaired leg showing no signs of the injury that had nearly cost him his life. Dr. Patricia Wong's surgical expertise, combined with months of dedicated physical therapy at Peaceful Paws Rehabilitation Center, had restored not just Rex's mobility, but his zest for life. Emma, now 8 years old and preparing for 3rd grade, laughed as she chased Rex around the oak tree that dominated their new backyard. Her transformation over the past 6 months had been as remarkable as Rex's physical recovery. The shy, serious child who had recognized her protector at the community fair had evolved into a confident young advocate whose voice carried weight far beyond her years. "Rex, come here, boy," Emma called, holding up his special therapy ball, a gift from one of the hundreds of supporters who continued following their story through the Foundation's monthly newsletter. Rex immediately responded, his training and intelligence as sharp as ever, despite his retirement from active duty. Maria Martinez stood at the kitchen window, watching her daughter play with the dog who had saved her life twice once in a storm. Drained 2.5 years ago, and again by giving Emma a purpose that had transformed their entire existence. Maria's own life had changed dramatically. Her story of resilience as a single mother had inspired a local business owner to offer her a full-time position with benefits as an office manager, finally providing the financial stability she'd struggled to achieve for years. The doorbell rang, and Maria smiled as she recognized the familiar silhouettes through the frosted glass. Officer Sarah Chun and James Rodriguez had become family in every way that mattered, their weekly Sunday dinners having evolved into a cherished tradition that none of them wanted to break. "How's our favorite foundation president doing today?" Rodriguez asked as Emma ran to greet them, Rex close behind with his tail wagging furiously. Rex's heroes had grown from a desperate idea conceived in the midst of crisis into a nationally recognized nonprofit organization that had already helped 73 retired police and military working dogs across 12 states. Emma served as the foundation's honorary president, a title that came with real responsibilities she took seriously despite her age. Every month, Emma recorded video messages for the foundation's social media channels, updating supporters on the animals they'd helped and introducing new cases that needed assistance. Her natural charisma and genuine passion for the cause had made her one of the most effective nonprofit advocates in the country, though she remained blissfully unaware of her celebrity status. "We helped another dog this week," Emma announced, proudly leading them to the living room where she kept a large world map dotted with pins representing every animal the foundation had assisted. "His name is Bruno, and he's in California. He got hurt chasing bad guys, just like Rex did chasing after me." The foundation's latest success story involved Bruno, a Belgian Malinois, whose handler had been killed in the line of duty, leaving the injured dog without anyone to cover his medical expenses. Emma's video appeal for Bruno had raised $18,000. In just 4 days, enough to cover his surgery and place him with the fallen officer's family. Rodriguez felt his chest swell with pride as he listened to Emma explain Bruno's situation, with the same clarity and compassion she brought to every case. His own transformation over the past 6 months had been as profound as anyone's. The depression and sense of worthlessness that had consumed him after his medical retirement had been replaced by a renewed sense of purpose that got him out of bed every morning with enthusiasm. "Emma, we have some exciting news to share," Chun said, pulling out an official-looking envelope. "The governor wants to present you and Rex with the state's highest civilian honor for community service. The ceremony is next month at the state capitol." Emma's eyes widened with excitement, but her first thought was characteristically selfless. "Will there be cameras there? Because if there are, maybe we can tell people about more dogs who need help." The living room walls were covered with letters, photos, and artwork from supporters around the world. Children from dozens of schools had sent drawings of Rex and Emma. Military families had shared photos of their own service animals. Police departments had sent official commendations thanking the foundation for its work. But perhaps the most meaningful display was a simple wooden frame containing the original newspaper clipping from Emma's rescue in 2022, positioned next to a recent photo of her and Rex at the foundation's headquarters, a small office space, donated by a local business owner who'd been moved by their story. "I've been thinking," Emma said suddenly, her voice taking on the serious tone she used when processing complex ideas. "Rex saved my life, and then I helped save his life, and now we're saving lots of other dogs' lives. It's like saving. Just keeps growing and growing." Rodriguez knelt down to Emma's level, his repaired shoulder no longer causing the constant pain that had defined his early retirement. "That's exactly right, Emma. That's how heroes work. They inspire other people to be heroes too. Chun nodded, thinking about how the foundation's work had inspired police departments nationwide to create better retirement programs for their canine officers. Your bravery that day at the fair didn't just save Rex. It changed how people think about taking care of animals who serve our communities. As if sensing he was the subject of conversation, Rex padded over and settled his large head in Emma's lap, a gesture that had become their signature pose in countless photos and videos. His brown eyes, still bright with intelligence and warmth, looked up at Emma with the same devotion he'd shown that terrifying night in the storm drain. "I love you too, Rex," Emma whispered, scratching behind his ears in the spot that always made his tail wag. "And I love that we get to help other dogs find families who love them as much as we love you." The afternoon stretched ahead with its familiar rhythm of dog park visits, foundation paperwork, and the simple pleasures of a family that had been forged through crisis and strengthened through purpose. Rex would accompany Emma to her school presentation next week, where she'd tell third graders about the importance of kindness to animals. Rodriguez would continue working with police departments to develop sustainable funding models for retired canine care. Chun would keep wearing her Rex's Heroes pin on her uniform, a daily reminder that sometimes the most important police work happens off-duty. But for now, they were simply a family enjoying a Sunday afternoon, secure in the knowledge that heroes come in all sizes, that second chances can create infinite possibilities, and that sometimes the most powerful force for change in the world is the voice of one determined child who refuses to accept that injustice is inevitable. As Emma hugged Rex close and began planning their next foundation video, none of them could have imagined that their story would still be inspiring people years later, or that the simple words, "That's my protector," would eventually help save hundreds of service animals across the country. But heroes rarely recognize their own heroism. They're too busy focusing on the next life that needs saving.